Hi, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor. It's been a while since I put out a painting video. I have been very busy recently. I got two big commission pieces. One I just finished. The other one is still going on. I can't share much detail about it yet, but I will definitely share it here with you when I am allowed to. Also, it is summer break, so kids are out of the school. We have a big trip to Asia coming up, so things are quite hectic to say the least. I am also going through a stage of struggle, which I will be sharing it with you at the end of this video if you are interested. I thought to share something I painted recently. This one was painted a few weeks ago. The photo reference was taken during my quick trip back to Taiwan during June. I took this photo right before I was about to board this plane. It's been a while since I painted an airplane, so it is a fun one. This painting is about 20 by 14 and it took me about 5 hours. The reflection on the wet runway in this scene is really what made me excited about this painting. All of the different surface quality of the reflections, some sharp, some soft, due to the different wetness of the surface because some part of the runway is painted and it is not perfectly flat and so on. I also like the sky, seeing part of the blue sky revealing while rest being cloudy. So I tried to capture what I like about the scene in my painting. This is something I'm trying to do with my painting right now. I really want to share what made me excited to paint this particular scenery. So without further ado, let's look at the process of this painting. Alright, so start from the line drawing. Block out the shape with a dull 4B pencil as always. So one thing I do want to mention again, I said that before in my other videos, that your painting doesn't start when you start to do the drawing. Your painting doesn't start when you start to do the washes. Your painting actually starts when you are picking a subject and when you are composing your image in your mind, whether through your camera or whether through your eyes, just looking at it. Composition is a very important thing for a whole picture. If you are just painting an individual element, if you're just painting an individual thing, then maybe not, but to paint a complete scenery like this one, you do need to compose your image a little bit. It's kind of like when you are shooting a movie, every single shot should be designed, should be well composed. So here you start to see me using a variety of tools. This is something that I started to do, I think starting last year. I just want to make things look cleaner, look better. And especially for a little bit bigger painting like this one with lots of perspective and things like that, I actually do want to use some tools to help me. So this is an airplane. I haven't painted an airplane for such a long time, so I want to make sure that the airplane looks good. This specific airplane is with Japan Airlines. And in the beginning, I was debating if I should just write out the word on the airplane body, the Japan Airline, just because everything else looked pretty detailed, and if the text is very loose and not legible, it might look a little bit weird. I want the whole painting to look somewhat consistent. So the line drawing is done, time to do the painting. So I wet the whole sky because I want to have a nice soft looking cloud in the sky. And I pre-mix the color, the blue sky on the left and some white cloud on the right. I wet it again just so that I can have a little bit more time to do wet on to wet. So some blue sky on the left, I spray a little bit of the water, a little bit of mist on the wash so I can work on it just a little bit longer. The overall sky is pretty bright, so I didn't put any heavy color on it. I just wanted to look like a nice cloudy sky with a little bit of blue on the left. It just rained, that's why it has quite a bit of reflection on the runway. So I really like how the sky turned out, so the best thing to do right now is to stop working on it to avoid overwork. So I paint the background, trees and hills, and start to continue the wash down. And I think before the wash is completely dry, I want to paint some wet onto wet reflections at the same time so that I can get some nice soft reflections. So here we go, adding some reflections and stuff. And after it's completely dry, I start to paint the airplane. I wet it first and then put some dark value underneath so I get the soft transition from light on the top to not exactly dark, maybe somewhat of a middle value. The main light source for this specific scene is directly from top. Because it's an overcast day, you don't see the strong directional light from the sun. The sun is lighting up the sky, and that makes the sky the main light source. So it is like this huge soft light from the top. So here I am going over the runway, trying to paint some different reflections. So I try to paint a variety of different reflections on the runway, some soft, some hard, because that is what happened. There's different surface quality on the runway, and that's what really piqued my interest when I was looking at this particular scene. So I try to give them enough attention and enough information. So continue to work on the plane, adding more dark on the very bottom. Try to get that dimensionality. Try to add that weight. So I start to just slowly adding in the elements as I go. Nowadays I try to experiment and try different ways to approach a painting. That is something that I'm going to share with you at the end of the video, which is also the source of my struggle recently. But right now, let's just say that I don't really have a set process at this moment because I want to figure out something new, but without just throwing away everything that I've learned about watercolor. So I'm kind of at this awkward stage right now, trying to do something new, but not entirely leaving everything that I have learned. So anyways, I pre-wet the runway and try to add some more reflection of the airplane. I leave out some of the area still dry so that I can have a mixture of sharp reflection and a soft reflection. Because it's actually quite complex when you look into the photo reference a little bit closer. And that difference, the varieties in the surface quality on the runway is something that I want to convey in my painting. So I don't just paint a huge soft reflection and call it a day. I actually want to give it a little bit more detail. So this is why I spend quite a bit more time than before on a painting. And that can be a little bit of challenge because my painting right now, I do want to have a little bit more detail. I want to have more interesting elements in my paintings. But sometimes I get a little bit too overboard on that, and it starts to look a little bit too busy. So how much details should I keep is still a very important question I need to ask myself when I paint. Taking a break from painting the airplane, and I darken the background a little bit. The reason I want to darken the background is because I want the airplane to pop out a little bit more. And in this case, the airplane is actually lighter than the background trees. So in order for the airplane to pop out more, I want to darken the background a little bit. So the airplane being white will pop out more because we're creating contrast. So adding some darker red on the lines, on the runway, and I start to paint some of details on the airplane body. So again, I'm not a hyper-realism painter, so some of the detail can still look a little bit loose. But that doesn't mean I don't paint them at all. I actually want to paint just a little bit more detail in my painting. But I'm still trying to figure out how much should I paint and how clean those details should look. Should they be very clean? Or should they be loose and spontaneous? Trying to find that balance is something that I am still working on. So now I'm writing the Japan airline text on the airplane. Try to keep it in perspective and start to paint the detail. Adding the window. Make it a bit darker. Using my small nylon brush, adding details. Darken the landing gear and connect that to some darker reflections. Again, adding dark and adding detail. And here I start to paint in the crew that's working on the plane. They should be a bit darker so that they shows up better. So this is also a bit of an acknowledgement to the hardworking crew in the airport. And it should come to no surprise that a lot of people are working in the airport, but I feel like this particular trip really hits me that in order for me to have a smooth boarding experience, a smooth flying experience, there's so many people working hard trying to make sure that happen for me and other passengers. We often take granted when we check in to the airport, and sometimes we get to enjoy the facility in the airport. We just check in our luggage and we pass the security, we walk to the boarding gate, but where our luggage goes and a lot of people making sure the plane is in a good condition to fly, everything is clean, and when you board it, they're going to make sure you're comfortable and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that nothing ever happened. Sometimes flight got delayed, sometimes there are human errors and things like that. But regardless, so many people are working hard in the background behind the scene so that we can board our airplane and make sure the luggage go with us. So thinking about that really made me feel humbled about the whole experience when we take it for granted of our traveling. Sometimes we feel that because we pay the airfare, so everything should work as it should. And if something doesn't work out exactly what we wanted, some people will complain, some people will actually just make a scene on the airplane or in the airport. I know not everybody does that. Majority of the people are pretty kind, but sometimes I do see some people yelling at the counter or even the lounges and things like that because they feel that they are entitled for better services and things like that. Personally, I try my best not to do that because I know there are a lot of people working hard for my enjoyment, even though I'm just one of the hundreds and thousands of the passengers. each day showing up at the airport, I still feel very grateful for all the crews and the flight attendants who are working. So anyways, I continue to work on the painting. I added some reflection for the working vehicles in the front, and continue to add some more dark details to complete the value range. So as I mentioned before, I spent about 4 to 5 hours for this particular painting, so I took quite a bit of time from drawing to painting. So I did paint in multiple sessions. Because first of all, it's very hard for me to just take 5 hours straight. Something can happen during my painting time. A kid might need help, or I might need to help my wife around the house or something like that, or I might need to go out for a lunch or a meal. So I need to break things up in different sessions. Plus, if I just focus on painting 5 hours straight, I am not quite sure if my brain capacity can do it. I'll probably get too tired. So here I'm starting to paint some dark detail for the vehicles in the front. And as I paint these darker values, I also think about how tight and how loose I should paint them. So here you can see I'm actually quite loose in some of the details because again, I'm not a hyper-realistic painter. I'm not going to paint every single detail exactly how it is in the photograph. I am not a camera, so I still can make some choices when I'm painting some areas. And I believe as long as when you zoom out, you look at the painting and it works, then I successfully interpret the details that I see. So paint the dark windshield in the front of this vehicle, adding some wet onto wet darkness. And here you can see I am actually painting quite a bit of details for this vehicle. The yellow stripe pattern in the front. Now it's pretty obvious that my painting doesn't look exactly like the photo. Like even the perspective, I have to sort of improvise a little bit because the photo is taken by a pretty wide angle phone camera. So that can happen. Most of the modern smartphone camera, the lenses are very wide. So when you took reference photo, make sure you zoom in a little bit, or after you took the photo, you need to kind of compensate for that a little bit. Maybe crop out some stuff and here and there. So here I added some more dark on the runway, trying to darken some of the reflections. So the painting overall is pretty much done. I'm just adding some darker details for the finishing touches. And here we have it. Here is the finished painting. I actually did a little bit more glazings to darken some areas and make the painting look deeper to create more contrast. I hope you enjoyed this demo and this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process and the painting. Now I want to share a little bit about the struggle that I'm going through right now. I am at the stage of my artistic journey that I don't like what I painted quite often. And I think that is because I am trying hard to venture out from what I have learned. As some of you might know, that when I first started to dabble watercolor, I was greatly inspired by Joseph Bookvich. I took his workshop to learn his process. I was trying hard to paint like him. After a couple of years, I came across Andy Evenson's painting and I went through the same thing. I took his workshop and I learned his process because I love his work. So you probably have seen my work progress from something look very similar to Joseph and onto Andy. I jokingly said that I learned watercolor from A to Z, A being Andy and Z being Spukvich. It wasn't until about a year ago I started to interview some artists that I admire so much, and they inspired me to start looking for my own voice. So I decided to try my best not to paint like the master I learned from. I still love their work and I still respect them a lot, but I think what's best for my growth as an artist is to start painting like myself. And that's much easier said than done. Trying to paint like Joseph, Andy, or any other master is much easier because you are using a method that's proven to work. It's like following a recipe. With enough practice, you can get your painting to look fairly close, but to come up with something new, from trying different things, experimenting different approaches, so I'm definitely going to dislike some of the bad experiments. What I have been doing is to look at the subject itself and really ask myself, what about the subject that really piqued my interest? So in the painting that I shared with you today, it is the varieties of the reflections on the runway. I want to capture those in my painting. Now this sounds reasonable, but before, when I pick a subject, I would first think about if it is similar to one of Joseph or Andy's painting, because if it is, then I have a very good template that I can work off from. I'm almost acting like a filter, taking a photo and then apply an Andy Evenson filter or Joseph Spukvich filter. That's how I approach painting, and it worked. But I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be honest by asking myself why I want to paint this thing. I believe this is my only way to paint something that is me. So now whenever I'm painting, I do not have a template to work with anymore. I can still apply some of the process that I learned from other masters, but I can no longer rely on the visual languages they develop for their paintings. I need to find my own way of speaking through my painting. So if you've been following me for a while, you might actually think my paintings haven't been very consistent. You might even think some of my older paintings actually look better. And that is what I'm struggling with right now. But you know what? That's okay. I believe it is a healthy struggle. I am an IMFJ, for those of you who is interested in MBTI. So that means I'm very keen on finding my own voice and think about who I am and share that with the outside world to make that connection. I'm not able to do that if I kept using someone else's visual language to do that. So I believe this struggle is necessary. It's not easy, but it's necessary. So I often don't like what I painted because I'm still under development. I have been a YouTuber for many years now. I know my channel is not that big, it's growing very slowly, but I did learn some tips on running a channel like mine. One of the tips that I learned is to establish myself as an expert and as an authority on the topic that I'm sharing, because everyone searching on YouTube is looking for an expert to answer their questions. But you know what? That's not me. I am not an expert. I realize the more I learned, the less I know. I want to be honest with myself and with you. I am on this artistic journey just like you, just like many other people. I might be a little bit ahead with my experience, but I never feel qualified to be an expert or an authority of any kind. So when you see my work being inconsistent or even become worse at one point, it's just me being me. I can stumble during this journey and I don't mind sharing those with you. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I hope this can be somewhat of an encouragement for you. So glad I get it out of my chest. So that's it for today's video. I thank you again for spending time to watch this video and listen to my sharing. As always, the world around us is in so much turbulence and chaos, and I hope you are safe and healthy and happy. I'm Eric from Cafe Watercolor. See you next time. God bless.